Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. The remarks by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi about possible military intervention in the Taiwan Strait have pushed China-Japan relations toward further deterioration. On November 15th, China expressed its anger almost across the board. Hong Kong Security Bureau updated information on its outbound travel alert website, stating that since the middle of this year, incidents of Chinese citizens being attacked in Japan have been on the rise. The SAR government is urging Hong Kong residents who are planning to go to Japan or are already there to stay vigilant. Pay attention to safety, keep an eye on the latest local announcements, as well as consular service information released by the Chinese Embassy in Japan. After the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued the travel alert, Air China, China Eastern, China Southern, Sichuan Airlines, Xiamen Airlines and Spring Airlines each released notices stating that for tickets on Japan routes that fall within the applicable scope, passengers can process refunds or changes according to the rules within the validity period. It is believed that Chinese citizens who have already purchased tickets to Japan, many people will choose to postpone or cancel their trips and go to other destinations instead. As for Japan's tourism industry, all they can do is complain to their own prime minister. Central media outlets like People's Daily and Xinhua News Agency have published commentaries. In addition to strongly criticizing Sanae Takaichi, foreign media have also noticed that this wave of intensive statements includes articles from the PLA Daily and Jungsing with titles such as, "If Japan dares to intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait, it will suffer a head-on blow." These are important official media platforms of the PLA. Zhengping Studio also published a commentary article titled "A Promise is a Promise." This reflects how Chinese netizens are responding to Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan, showing just how tough their stance is. The article points out that, as the saying goes, a new official burns three fires. But Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi insists on playing with fire repeatedly. She even openly declared in Parliament that if mainland China uses force against Taiwan, it could constitute a situation of existential crisis for Japan. She implied the possibility of Japan's military intervention in the Taiwan Strait, and the malicious nature and far-reaching impact of these remarks mark a dangerous new high for Japan's statements on Taiwan. The article directly compares Sanae Takaichi's existential crisis theory to the 1931 Mukden incident and the 1937 Marco Polo Bridge incident. It points out that, in comparison, every instance of Japan's modern-era external expansion has always begun with a carefully crafted crisis narrative. In 1931, Japan's Kwantung, they blew up a section of the South Manchuria Railway near Lutiaohu in Shenyang themselves, falsely claiming it was the work of Chinese troops. Then, under the pretext of protecting overseas Japanese and maintaining order, they immediately occupied northeast China. In 1937, during military exercises near the Marco Polo Bridge, Japan used the excuse of a missing soldier to demand a search, and when refused, they promptly shelled Wanping City, launching a full-scale war of aggression against China. These crimes, nailed to the annals of history, were all covered up by lies about so-called emergency self-defense in the face of national crisis, masking their aggressive ambitions. Back then, Japan used such lies to trample on the sovereignty of Asian countries. Now Sanae Takaichi is reviving this narrative, repeating the same old tricks, but in reality it's just an excuse for Japan to break through military restrictions and seek to build up offensive capabilities. In recent years, Japan has been steadily hollowing out the pacifist constitution, completely abandoning the principle of exclusive self-defense, and increasing its defense budget year by year. They have relaxed restrictions on the defense budget and weapons exports, recklessly advancing down the path of military build-up. The article points out that Sanae Takaichi seems to have forgotten that aggression and expansion only bring disaster upon oneself. Back then, Japan's pursuit of militarism and relentless warmongering ultimately pushed the country into the abyss of defeat. Today's China is no longer the country of 1931 that could be invaded at will, nor is it the impoverished nation of 1895 that was forced to cede Taiwan. China's determination to defend its national sovereignty and territorial integrity is as solid as a rock, and its ability to crush separatist plots and resist external interference is beyond doubt. The Taiwan issue is the core of China's core interests. Who dares to touch it? This is a red line that over 1.4 billion Chinese people will absolutely not tolerate being crossed, the article says, just as in response to Sanae Takaichi's online remarks. Chinese netizens' barrage of comments saying a promise is the strongest declaration of public opinion. The article concludes by advising certain Japanese politicians to immediately stop provoking on the Taiwan issue and not to repeatedly test the dangerous boundaries. If they persist in the delusion of reviving militarism, Japan will inevitably repeat the mistakes of history. The article mentions that a promise is a promise, and the comments on the screen are mainland netizens' response and challenge to Sanai Takaichi. The meaning is that if you intend to intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait, the Chinese People's Liberation Army will confront you with its most advanced equipment. The PLA's social media platforms have published articles on this topic, showing their agreement with what the public is saying. A promise is a promise, we're just waiting for you to come. The anger is direct and tough. As for CCTV's social media platform, Yuyuan Tantian, it directly interpreted that countermeasures against the Japanese side have long been prepared. Yuyuan Tantian summarized the Chinese government's actions over the past 2 days, including Ambassador Zhao Zhan's protest to Japan and the strong statements from central media. Afterwards, they said they would explain and interpret the changes in China's stance for Sanai Takaichi. What exactly do these changes mean? What consequences will Japan face and what price will it have to pay? On November 13th, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Feng Shizhao met with the Japanese ambassador to China to lodge a stern protest. The use of the term fengshi is quite uncommon. After searching through publicly available official information online, it was found that this term is appearing for the first time in the context of China-Japan relations. Han Haoyu, a Japanese affairs expert at the China Institute of International Studies, explained that fengshi refers to handling matters assigned by superiors. This means that the Chinese vice foreign minister is not simply negotiating in his capacity as a vice minister, but is directly representing a higher level of authority in expressing a position. In other words, this is behind the will of each country stands the 1.4 billion people of China. The article also quotes netizens' analysis saying fengshi means to respond with respect, and the next step is to raise vigilance. After that, the next step would be to counterattack on orders. As for which path to take, it is up to Sanai Takaichi to choose. Besides the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, recently, the Taiwan Affairs Office and the Ministry of National Defense have also spoken out against Sanai Takaichi's remarks. The Nankai University Institute of Japanese Studies, Jiading Leju, believes that this shows the incident has already gone beyond a typical diplomatic dispute. The fact that these departments are speaking out together is, in itself, a kind of stance. This further demonstrates that the Chinese side has already characterized Sanai Takaichi's remarks as a major issue touching on national dignity and core interests, and that the Japanese side must reflect and correct itself, leaving no room for ambiguity. Yuan Tantan also summarized the interactions between China and Japan after Sanai Takaichi made her remarks on November 7th. It pointed out that it was only after Takaichi refused to retract her statements that China raised the level of its diplomatic engagement. Looking at the entire process, the Chinese side has already given the Japanese side ample opportunities and room to maneuver, even as the situation escalated. China still clearly laid out a path to resolve the issue. The Japanese side needs to deeply reflect on history, immediately correct its mistakes, and retract its harmful remarks. If Japan stubbornly refuses to change, then China will have no reason to continue exercising restraint. In China's response, there were two statements. All consequences must be borne by the Japanese side, and we will surely deliver a head-on blow. After searching through official online information, it was found that this phrase, head-on blow, appeared for the first time in the context of China-Japan relations. These statements in this context signal that China is already prepared to take substantive countermeasures. Ding Lezhu, an expert at the Japan Research Institute of Nankai University, said that all consequences refers to any actions that are in line with international law and international norms. First and foremost, China has already accumulated ample experience in countermeasures regarding Taiwan-related issues. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs' current list of counter-sanctions, about 80% of the cases involve Taiwan-related issues. Among them are quite a few Japanese politicians. Whenever necessary, China can take similar measures at any time. Secondly, China could suspend intergovernmental exchanges with Japan in areas such as the economy, diplomacy, and military. In the past, when China mentioned all consequences, it has actually implemented some of these measures. The article points out that it's important to note that China is Japan's largest trading partner. Data shows that many Japanese products are highly dependent on imports from China. The China Institute of International Studies Japan Affairs expert Xiang Haoyu from the China Institute of International Studies said that when China mentioned striking back head-on in its response statement, this is not just diplomatic rhetoric but also carries a clear military implication. Both the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of National Defense have used this term on matters of principle. The article also points out that in the past 2 days, Japan has even tried to revive military terminology for the Japanese army, including old titles like Daiza and others. All these signs indicate that Japanese militarism still harbors ambitions and even wants to challenge China with submarines. So first, Japanese politicians should go and ask Liaoning, then ask Shandong, then ask Fujian, and also ask recently about Sichuan in maritime affairs, and ask if Oriental Express would agree. Liu Yaodong, Deputy Director of the Institute of Japanese Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, pointed out that as a defeated country in World War II, Japan's national conduct is clearly restricted by the United Nations Charter and by Article 9 of its own pacifist constitution. This includes renouncing the use of force to resolve international disputes. Not maintaining armed forces and similar measures are central to the post-war East Asian order. Japan cannot unilaterally break these constraints. Thus, the Chinese side's view of Sanai Takaichi's recent remarks is not only about China-Japan relations, but also points out that it seriously violates international norms and basic principles of international relations and undermines the post-war order. The article argues that from the September 18th incident to Pearl Harbor, Japan then used so-called pretexts to justify its actions. Step by step, these crises led to external aggression. Now, is this kind of dangerous narrative resurfacing again? Japan should give both China and the international community an explanation. Any attempt to overturn history or challenge the bottom line will absolutely not succeed. The final paragraph of the article is not only tough but also confidently warns and sternly advises certain people in Japan not to live in an arrogant and delusional dream, and even bluntly suggests they should take a good look at their own capabilities compared to China. There's a similar saying in Japan, if you don't do it, you won't die. There are some things that simply shouldn't be done. Regarding the recent travel advisory issued by China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, warning against traveling to Japan, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno said on the 15th that this differs from Japan's own understanding. Precisely because of these different positions, multi-level communication between Japan and China is even more important. But if they're still talking about communication now, it seems a bit late. To sum up simply, based on the statements from central media in mainland China, what are some key observations? First, diplomats have lodged protests in a timely manner, showing that this tough stance towards Japan comes directly from the highest levels of China, leaving no room for compromise. Second, the severity of the situation has been characterized as a military threat to China. Third, according to scholars' interpretations, this is not just a diplomatic incident. China's aircraft carriers and Dongfeng missiles are also ready. Fourth, China's countermeasures will continue to be rolled out one after another.